What if I told you, a crisis doesn't make everyone poorer? In fact, for some people, it's the most profitable time they'll ever experience. While headlines scream panic, markets crash, and millions rush to protect what they have. Another group is quietly buying businesses, buying property, buying stocks, at prices that may never return again. The question isn't why the rich get richer. The real question is, why do they keep seeing opportunities where everyone else only sees fear? That's what we're about to uncover. Let's look at what actually happens to wealth during a crisis. During the first 3 months of COVID-19, global markets collapsed, unemployment hit record highs, millions of people lost their savings, and in that same 3 months, the combined wealth of the world's billionaires increased by over $1.3 trillion. Not despite the crash, during it, after the 2008 financial crisis, those who bought the S&P 500 at the bottom in March 2009 saw returns of over 400% by 2013. 4 years, 400%. The crash didn't destroy that wealth, it transferred it from the people who panicked to the people who prepared. Here's the most important thing to understand about a financial crisis. Money doesn't disappear, it moves. When a market crashes, wealth isn't destroyed, it changes hands. The house that sold for $400,000 in 2006 and foreclosed for $120,000 in 2009 still existed. Same walls, same roof, same house. The wealth inside it moved from one person's hands to another's. In 2008, millions of families lost their homes, and a small group of investors bought those homes for cents on the dollar. In 2020, thousands of small businesses shut down permanently, and a small group of buyers acquired those businesses for almost nothing. This isn't a conspiracy, it's a pattern, and it has repeated itself after every single major crisis in modern history. The Great Depression, the dot-com crash, 2008, COVID, every time without exception. Here's what most people miss. The rich don't get rich during a crisis. They get ready before one. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway held over $140 billion in cash just before COVID hit, not because he was afraid, because he was waiting. Waiting for exactly the kind of moment that scares everyone else. The most powerful financial move you can make during a crisis isn't made during the crisis, it's made years before it. So why can't most people do what wealthy investors do? It's not because they lack intelligence. It's not because they don't have access to information. It comes down to 3 psychological gaps. Gap 1, the timeline when markets crash. The average person thinks in days. Will I lose my job this week? Can I pay rent next month? The wealthy investor thinks in decades. Will this asset be worth more in 10 years? Almost certainly yes. Same crash, different clock. Gap 2. The news trap. Financial media doesn't profit from your calm, it profits from your fear. Markets in freefall. Worst crash since 1929. Experts warn of depression. These headlines aren't designed to inform you. They're designed to keep you watching. And while you're watching the crash on television, the wealthy investor is reading balance sheets, looking for companies that are fundamentally strong, but temporarily cheap. Gap 3, the cash problem. Most people have no money available to invest during a crisis because they never built a fund specifically for that purpose. They have an emergency fund, but not an opportunity fund. Those are 2 very different things. One keeps you safe. The other makes you wealthy. Here's a real example of the gap in action. In October 2008, at the peak of the financial crisis, the news was catastrophic. Banks were failing, governments were scrambling, people were terrified. And Warren Buffett published an article in the New York Times. The title was, "Buy American, I Am." He wasn't being reckless. He was executing a plan he'd already made, years before the crash. While most people were paralyzed by fear, he was acting on a decision he'd already made long ago. That's not genius, that's preparation. So what is the actual playbook? 3 things. 1, they build an opportunity fund. Not just an emergency fund to survive a crisis. A separate fund to invest during one, even small amounts. 5% of every paycheck set aside specifically for the moment prices collapse. You won't time it perfectly. You don't need to, you just need to be ready when it comes. 2, they make the decision before the crash. This is the most powerful thing on this list. Before a crisis, decide in writing, if the market drops 30%, I will buy X. If property prices fall by this much, I will move. When you make the decision in advance, you remove emotion from the equation entirely. Because when the moment arrives, you're not deciding, you're just executing. 3, they look at fundamentals, not headlines. A company's stock price dropped 60%. That doesn't mean the company is worthless. It means the market is scared. The question the wealthy investor asks is simple. Is this business fundamentally broken, or is it just temporarily unpopular? If the answer is the second one, that's where wealth is built. Here's the truth about financial crises. Every crisis in recorded history has eventually ended. Every market crash has eventually recovered. The question is never whether it will recover. The question is always who will be positioned when it does. The difference between those who came out ahead and those who didn't was never intelligence. It was rarely luck. It was almost always preparation. The rich don't have a different relationship with money. They have a different relationship with fear. They've trained themselves to see what others can't see when panic sets in. Not opportunity everywhere, just the same fundamentals. Through a clearer lens, you can build that lens too. It starts with one decision: to prepare before the next crisis arrives, because it will arrive. It always does, and next time. You get to choose which group you're in, but here's the hardest part of everything you just heard: knowing this, and still not being able to act on it when the moment comes, because when markets are crashing and your savings are shrinking, and everyone around you is panicking, your brain does something very specific, something that overrides logic. Something that has cost ordinary investors trillions of dollars across history. It's called panic selling. And it's the exact reason most people sell at the bottom, right before the recovery begins.